How an external culture helped to create a new culture. Does the history of Australia had an effect on their population? Compare the similarities between nations in the same conditions of population. Is there a way to increase Australia's population?
In in a century before, the English captain James Cook, who took possession of the southeast island in the name of the king. The main history of Australia comes with when the king of England decided that they needed space to put their prisoners, but they didn't want to keep the overpopulation in their prison. So what they did, as they got ships and they sent them to Australia. When they sent them to Australia, they set up some penitentiaries there, different spaces and cities, and say different autonomous states. That is the main roots of Australia, and that's how a new culture was constructed and was founded by another culture. That's why we can see today that the English flag or the UK flag can be seen in the Australian flag, as long as we can see that the Australians talk very similar to the English. Australia, in reality, in the 20th century, was still a reunion of colonies and autonomous states. But in 1901, the different states got to an agreement to a referendum to construct a federation, and they chose a similar flag. In 1927, Australia established their capital in Canberra, and they started off as a state, as an official state. And throughout time, Australia started getting recognized by other nations as an independent state. In another part, the Australians made part of the First and Second World War with their own military, and that's how they got to help the Allies, which were the English, which will always be the English. Nowadays, there is a still old English colony that acts like an autonomous state in Australia to the king, to the Queen of England, and and basically that is the history of Australia.
Australia and Canada have many commonalities. Both are Commonwealth nations, have the Queen of England as their head of the state, control the majority of world's uranium reserves, have a very large migrant population, have an official policy of multiculturalism, and have both a strong left-wing element that defines its identity with anti-American rhetoric. Those countries, Australia and Canada, are not the worst in terms of population worldwide, but the territory of these countries is very huge, and the amount of people who must cover this territory is very low. That means that the density of both nations would be very low, and that's the reality that these nations are suffering. Seeing the statistics, Canada and Australia are two of the countries with the least population worldwide, being in the range of 3 to 4. By the other hand, the nations with the most density is Singapore or Monaco, being in the range of 8,000 and 26,000. That means that Australia and Canada are very low and very bad in that aspect. Okay, talking about the weather conditions and landform of Australia and Canada, they can be differ very much between them. For example, most of Australians have never seen snow, and most of Canadians have never seen that desert. By the other hand, the climate of both countries are very different. Australia is characterized for being warm, a warm climate, and Canada having a cold climate. Most of Australia has incredible harsh landscapes, which makes it about the same and complete opposite of Canada. The majority of Australia is desert. A massive amount of Canada is tundra.